you guys are in for a treat. This was probably one of the funnest episodes I ever did. This is a podcast that I was invited to speak with. This was with Liam, The Plant Slant. Go search for him everywhere. I'll leave the links below. The Plant Slant on almost every platform. And Rob Lapham from Canada. I'll leave the links as well. This was fun. I mean, these guys are absolutely hilarious. I don't even know. We didn't even have an agenda. We didn't have an outline. We didn't have an agenda. They're like, hey, come on our podcast. We just kind of wing it. It's episode 69. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They're like, no, we're just joking. Every episode is 69. I'm like, okay, well, sounds like fun. But we talked about heart disease. We talked about these online, medfluencer clowns that just bring up nonsense. We talked about other doctors who claim to be carnivore and all their nonsense ideas. We talked about like how patients are fooled by this and why the public needs trustworthy people who are not out to like get you or sell you some nonsense or sell you some crazy supplements or, sell you a fake dream that you're going to live longer if you do X, Y, Z and it's not true. So this was a really, really good podcast. I think you guys are going to love this one. The less I talk, probably the better. Read the description if you want the details, but man, this was fun. And I feel like I wish every podcast was this fun. So you guys are in for a treat. Listen to all of it. I think we went well over an hour and a half, and I think you guys are going to love it. Follow me for more awesome advice.
Welcome to In Moderation,
the show where we give you a moderate dose of info, sarcasm, and we already know we're not approved.
All right, everybody, since Rob introduced the last one, as he just told me he did, because I don't remember anything, just like the number of episodes we've done, episode 69 again, we have...
For the sixth time.
For the sixth time, episode 69. For today, on today's episode of In Moderation, we have Dr. Aloe. I'm excited. Dr. Aloe, I was friends with you like on TikTok, like early on when I started making content. How you doing?
I'm awesome. I remember we started off at about around the same time, and it was kind of interesting. We'd go live a lot. Right. We'd bring on Dr. Terry Simpson.
Yeah.
It was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, I remember we did start about the same time. That's right. I remember you were like, doing like a doctor recommends, and you were just like recommend different channels. Yes. And I was like one of them or something. I was like, oh yeah, that's me. Awesome. And
yeah,
it was one of my...
I had a thing called Doctors to Follow because there was so much nonsense on social media, right?
That's what it was.
A bunch of idiots. So one of the things I was doing, people were like, oh, who do you recommend we should follow? So I was like, well, I'll just start a playlist called Doctors to Follow. And you were one of the first ones. I was like, obviously he's not a doctor, but I'm giving an honorary medical degree.
Honorary doctorate.
Honorary doctorate. That's all I've ever wanted. I don't want all the work of getting a real doctorate. I much prefer the honorary. As long as I get the title, that's all that really matters, right? Yeah, I remember you did a bunch of other people like Lane Norton and, even like Ben Carpenter and stuff like that. That was great.
Yeah, it's good company.
Yeah, it's good company. Well, doctor, what are you a doctor of for people who don't know? What do you specialize in?
So I'm a cardiologist. Obviously, all cardiologists are internists too. So you do, internal medicine first. So you're really good at taking care of adults, all forms of adult disease. And then you specialize in heart disease. I'm also a certified personal trainer. So a lot of people come at me and they're like, you don't know anything about nutrition and exercise. I'm like, actually, I have a degree in exercise science. It's not like a PhD, but it's, a certified personal trainer is not an easy thing to get, but it's an extra degree. I'm super fascinated with fitness. I coach a lot of sports. I train my friends. I train myself in working out. I was doing like some bodybuilding, got down to like 7% body fat at one point. I still work out pretty much every day, sort of like you guys do. I love coaching sports. I love mentoring young people. You almost become like a second father to a lot of the kids you coach. And it's a lot of fun. I've coached almost every sport you can name, mainly football, flag football.
Canadian or American?
American. I also coach football. The soccer version of it. I actually have 2 books, one on how to dominate soccer and one on how to dominate flag football.
Oh, I didn't know you had. I know you have your other book, your Heart to Heart, right? Is that what it is?
I got a cookbook on how to eat heart healthy, but this is super unique. And I don't think the chapters are divided up into calories needed to lose weight. So like, let's say, Liam, you need to lose weight. You go to the 1800 calorie chapter. There's multiple different numbers. There's 2400, 2200, 2000, 1800, all the way down to 1200. You go to 1800, you make breakfast, lunch, and dinner and dessert, and you will lose weight. And each chapter contains enough protein for that person of that weight. Let's say you weigh like 200 pounds, you need to lose some. You get about 160 to 180 grams of protein a day,
right?
But there's no saturated fat, there's no salt, it's heart healthy. You know, a lot of it is like protein that is not going to give you a lot, put you over your calories or, you know, put you too high on saturated fat. So it's super, super unique. There's no other book like it.
Yeah. So since you do nutrition and you're like a cardiologist as well, like what do you kind of recommend in terms of like your dietary recommendations, since you kind of do both of them, this crossover?
So generally speaking, you want to follow a more Mediterranean or DASH style diet. These are like more wholesome foods, you know, the usual stuff that somebody would eat if, you know, minus most of the ultra processed stuff. You can eat it. I'm not super strict about that. But if the majority of your food is, you know, plants, fruits, vegetables, legumes, lean meats, salmon, there's studies, you know, with fish
nuts, seeds.
Consumption, nuts, seeds, all that kind of stuff. Exactly. You guys probably follow very similar diets. Now, if somebody's like, I want to eat a Pop-Tart, like, okay, dude, eat a Pop-Tart. No big deal. Like, well, I want to eat ice cream every night. Have at it. Just fit it into your calorie count. You know, as long as your cholesterol and lipid markers are all okay, which they can be, you'll be totally fine. So I'm not like an extremist or a fanatic when it comes to being really strict about food. People are like, well, do you ever eat red meat? Sure. You know, not every day. I'm not having ribeyes. It's like usually the top sirloins or fillets, but it's super rare.
But where do we fall on bull testicles?
Are bull testicles lean? Are those full saturated fat? I honestly don't know the answer to this.
If you ask my good friend Paul Saladino, we had that great debate one time, and I had literally just got, this is the funniest story. I obviously do a lot of videos on Paul Saladino, right? Because you guys do too, because we debunk a bunch of nonsense. I literally just got done calling this guy a naked caveman, telling people to eat raw bull liver, testicles, whatever. I made up some crazy thing that doesn't even exist, raw liver, bull testicle extract or whatever. And he messages me the next day. Had nothing to do. He never saw any of my videos. He has no idea I make fun of him. I was obscure. He probably had no idea who the hell I am. And he's like, hey, he's like, you're a cardiologist. Do you mind hopping on my podcast and talking about cholesterol? Oh, he goes, different ideas about cholesterol. So I was like, oh God, this guy, did he not watch what I just posted? So it's like, this guy has like billions of followers. I'm pretty sure he didn't see any of the stuff I posted, because there was like a YouTube video that I'd done about him recently that was like, this guy's just probably the worst influencer you can have. So I went to my YouTube studio real quick and like turn that off, because like if he did some research about me, he'd probably be like,
great. He gets so much hate though. I'm sure he just doesn't even pay attention to any of it, because like it's just from everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I tune it out now. At this point, I read the comments and try to respond to people who are respectful and normal. But if people are like, you're ugly, your eyebrows look fake, why does your hair look like that? I'm like,
exactly.
I'm sure you guys get the same thing with the braided beard and the hair and all that. But it's like, dude, if you can't get past the way someone looks and just talk about the actual content or the data or the stuff.
But that's social media, right? It's a beauty
literally
contest.
My most recent Paul Saladino video, I of course had that guy that came in and was like, hey, Paul looks healthier than you.
Who do you want to look like?
I'm like, first of all, I can deadlift probably 3 Paul Saladinos, right? I mean, like literally I deadlift, I squat, I bench press, maybe not 3 of them, but definitely 2. I'm just saying, the guy goes outside with beef tallow on and sits in the sun all day. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if that stuff is, so him and I had a really long conversation before we went on air, and it was the same program we're using now, because his Wi-Fi was like glitchy. They keep going in and out and you have to start over. So we were talking a lot while he's trying to set up and do stuff. I have it all recorded because I didn't think he was gonna actually post it. Right. So I had my own like background screen share grab, OBS video, whatever that program's called, to record it on my end in case the guy was like, I'm not going to post this. This didn't work out as well as I thought it would. But credit to him. He did post the entire thing completely unedited with his liver testicle supplement commercials in between.
Of course.
But he did. And I give him credit. I mean, we had a good, lively debate. Depends on who you ask. Like, oh, he won, you won. Like, I don't know, dude, it wasn't a win or anything. It was like a debate about, here's the science and data, and here's liver testicles.
And now you have last month, he goes on More Plates, More Dates podcast and talks about how he's moving away from carnivore because it's not healthy.
Not only that, but his testosterone went down. He just feels like garbage. He hated it. He doesn't think anybody should do it. That was the final sentence. He's like, I don't think anybody should do keto, which, like, okay, dude, we've been telling you this for 5 years.
But he did write a book on it first, all about the carnivore diet.
Yeah, and made a lot of money. Liver King says they sold $100 million worth of supplements. So, it's hard to. And then the funniest thing, okay, so when I was preparing for my talk with Paul Saladino, I'll give you guys another backstory. I went back and listened to all his podcasts that he did with other quote unquote doctors on cholesterol. Okay. He interviewed that guy, Asim Malhotra, the nut job from UK that, they pretty much suspended him and kicked him out of the England because he's like pro-vaccine, then he's anti-vaccine, then he's for statins, then he's anti-statins, like literally every 10 minutes, wherever the money is, he changes his mind. So forget that guy. So he didn't, in the end, Asim Malhotra did say, and Paul said in that interview that statins do seem to work, right? I just want to make sure that we're kind of on the same page, at least on he actually does read data and you can't really deny it, right? So he did say that. I'm like, okay, we can have a discussion that seems fruitful because he's not denying the data. He said at the end, every single study about statin medications has shown benefits. I was like, okay, this dude is not insane. We can have a conversation. But I went back further to an interview, I think it was 2018, with a guy called Malcolm Kendrick, another one of these crazy cholesterol deniers. Funny clip in there. Paul Saladino says, yeah, those guys are idiots. They're just trying to sell you supplements.
Yeah, the stat.
And I'm like, you know what? I was gonna go back and clip that and be like, He said he doesn't believe somebody. They were talking about somebody. Him and Malcolm Kendrick were talking about somebody, and I forget, they both didn't like this somebody. And he's like, they just say that to sell supplements. They just sell supplements. And then
meanwhile, he does all his videos with the supplements in the background, just in plain view. And they're always just right around him. Yeah.
This was probably before he started selling supplements. So I want to go back and probably stitch that video. But I had to screen record the other one because it was on YouTube. It's a long video on YouTube. I would highly recommend you guys find that. You can easily go now because it has the auto text, the auto chapters, and the auto transcript. If you just search it for supplement, you probably find the exact moment in time when he said that, and you could probably make a very funny video. I know you guys love doing that too.
It's ridiculous. I always see that thing, you talk about statins obviously in your videos because heart medicine doctor, but I always see big pharma is just trying to get your money, and it's just statins, aren't they generic and super cheap now? They cost pennies. Who's making all this money off them? What's going on?
A 1 month supply literally costs probably 2 pennies. I mean, your insurance charges you $3 for a 90-day supply or whatever it might be, maybe 10 depending on your copay and what insurance plan you signed up for. But generally speaking, first of all, nobody, I'm not gonna say nobody, but you don't get money for prescribing a medication. At the end of the month, there's no Pfizer calls me up and they're like, you only prescribed 10
You did pretty well this month, doc.
You only prescribed 10 Crestors, we're only sending you $10. No, what are you guys talking about? It's why do people think this? There's so many weird conspiracy theories out there. It's almost laughable. And the other big one is who funded that study? You're just demonstrating that you've never read research in your life. Literally right at the top, it says funding, and right under that, conflict of interest. You've never even opened a study in your life. If you're asking who funded that study, you're just an idiot. I'm not going to say that to people, but it's it's very intellectually lazy. I try to be nice. I'm you could actually just read the study.
Right along with me with it's banned in other countries. Who funded this and it's banned in other countries are kind of right alongside each other for me, because it's very easy for people to just say that and then move on. Okay, who funded that, or it's banned somewhere else, and then I don't have to do anything else. It just makes it's a very simple term, right?
It's also simple thinking. And I think part of it, and I'm not making fun of people. Obviously, I love people and I want to help them. But part of it, and you guys do too, obviously a lot of it is people want, I think, to believe that there's some other force out there that's preventing them from becoming the healthiest they can be, or why society is so overweight and obese. They almost want to blame, but not like in a bad way, but it's easier for them to accept the fact that we're not healthy as a country, whether it's Canada, where Rob is, or the United States, because there's this magical power called big pharma or big government or big food or big agriculture or big whatever. And I have sympathy for these people. Obviously, I'm not, this cold, evil, person. I love people, and I would love for them to get better and accept some facts and accept some personal responsibility. I did not make you fat. I did not give you hypertension or diabetes.
I'm sure you were there shoving the cookies down their throat.
No, it's the seed oils. That's what did it.
Just get the fun all poured in.
The seed oil people are totally another breed. Like I've posted on Twitter and TikTok and every app you can imagine. Cite one single study. Just give me one where it showed seed oils caused harm to human beings. Not rats, not test tubes, not vehicles, not oceans.
No, it's all mechanisms. They're like,
humans.
This does this, which could do that in humans. Like, it's all this. Yeah.
But then when you force feed seed oil to people, they live longer and they have less heart attacks, less strokes. They lose more fat. They actually improve all their cardiometabolic risk factors.
And that's just because, they're poly and monounsaturated fats, which we see. Exactly. And that's why there's a lot of people who say like, oh, saturated fat has been demonized. You should be eating butter every day. And it's just like, I've gone over this. You've talked about it a bunch. I've talked about it a bunch. But like basically, I guess we'll just kind of give the TLDR on this with saturated fat. When you get to about like over 9-10% of your calories from saturated fat, you start to see some negative consequences from this. But a lot of these studies will look at the difference between 10% and 16% or 12% and 18%, and you don't see that much difference in there. But if you go from 6% to 12%, there's a big difference there.
There's a huge difference. It's a sigmoidal curve. So below about 7%, you're not going to see a difference. Whether if you took somebody who eats about 6 or 7% total calories or total energy from saturated fat and drops it to 2 or 3 or almost 0, no difference in all-cause mortality, cardiovascular mortality, anything. You do the same thing with like above about 12% to let's say 100%. If you eat all saturated, you eat only butter all day, all night, like these carnivore people, you eat only saturated fat. You're going to have a flat line of, very high though, cardiovascular mortality, all-cause mortality, cardiovascular events, strokes, heart attacks, all of that. There's an inflection point right around 8-ish, 9-ish%. When you drop from like a 10 to a 7, huge difference. There's like the hazard ratio drops from almost 2 down, or like that 1.5 to 2, like so 50 to almost 100% worsening of outcomes, to almost like a 20 to 30% reduction in almost all outcomes. So the country of Finland, you guys can look this up. Look up the Finland study, or the North Karelia Finland study. In the 1970s, they had the highest mortality. 700 people out of every 100,000 would die, which was the highest in the world. And these were like these were in the rural areas of, northern Finland, North Karelia, other areas. These were like rural farmers. They ate tons of butter, like literally 18 kilograms per person per year. That's like, I don't know, Rob understands kilograms. Yeah. I don't. But in America, let's say that's like we 45 pounds, units. 45 pounds maybe. 45 pounds for our American friends, and 18 kilograms. That's a lot of butter. So what they did is they sent out like nurses and these public, officials to go out there and educate people on what can we do. They reduced saturated fat intake. They actually obesed. They actually gained weight. Smoking dipped a little, stayed about the same, but in women it went up. Hypertension went down, not a lot, but they got them down under control. They had an 84% reduction in mortality, and they got down to about 100 people out of every 100,000 over the next like 30 years. And that study is still going on till today. By 2011, they had an 84% reduction in mortality. 73% of it was attributed to the reduction in saturated fat. Now, after the first couple of years, when they noticed the numbers starting to go down, they made it all of Finland, not just North Karelia. And from that point on, pretty much all of Finland they lagged a little, but it was an 82% reduction for the rest of Finland. That's like a huge chapter in my new cholesterol book, looking at that. About 20% of the reduction in mortality had to do with blood pressure and like other factors. Yeah. But this is as obesity rates have gone up. So even here in the United States and Canada, we've had a significant decline in cardiovascular death rates, right? In the 1960s, pretty much everybody died of heart disease. 90% of people would die of heart disease. Now it's about 33%. And since the 1960s, we've had about an 80%, 90% drop in death from heart disease while people have gotten more overweight. While
it always boggles my
oils.
mind that people try to say that our cardiovascular rate has gone up. And it's like, no, it's gone down.
What is even more
despite worse metabolic chronic disease, more people are hypertensive, more people are overweight, more people have become obese, slightly more diabetics, not a huge change, but some. But still, despite a higher burden of worse chronic disease, less and less people are dying every year of actual heart disease. So we're actually doing a really good job, but they're like, oh, it's the seed oils, brother.
What I find interesting, though, is they always say we're not treating the root cause. That's like Eastern medicine treats the root cause. We don't treat the root cause but it's like, but that's okay. Well, then how has heart disease decreased in the rate of heart disease decreased while all these other things are increasing? Like, we understand that having high cholesterol over the long term, like I know you've pointed it out, I've looked it up, it's really interesting studies of people like World War II. Like, there was people who came back, like, 19-year-olds, 20 years old, and they checked their like arteries, and they actually had plaque, like the beginnings of plaque in their arteries at like 20 years old.
Depending on how high their cholesterol was.
Right.
It was commensurate with their cholesterol levels. Even moms, in addition to that, newborns who were born to moms, like miscarriages, not born, I guess not technically born, but miscarriages or, accidental abortions, and even probably planned abortions maybe. But they've looked at, babies that were born to mothers of very high cholesterols, like 300s and et cetera. They had fatty streaks in their arteries, their aortas, because it's bigger. You can't get into their coronaries, they're tiny.
Okay.
But they had super high, the higher the mom's cholesterol, the more fatty streaks they had. We've known this since 1913. The very first study that was done on this was in rabbits.
Really?
Androvich, I forget his name. He fed rabbits saturated fat, basically.
Because rabbits don't eat meat, so they're like can't handle the saturated fat, right? Like,
well, not just that, but they fed them like rabbit chow that was full of egg yolks and saturated fat, and their cholesterols went up. And then not only that, they even infused LDL, lipoproteins or cholesterol. They didn't have LDL at the time, but they infused cholesterol into rabbit arteries. And within hours, they had fatty streaks in their arteries, like even just infusing cholesterol. So these people are like, what is the root cause? I think the root cause people are also, I'm very sympathetic to them, because they're also like in this weird conspiracy world of no one wants to treat root cause. Like, okay, so somebody has a cold and they get a bacterial infection. We treat the bacteria, which is the root cause, with antibiotics. You can't tell me that like eating more celery in a day would have fixed that, because they're all like, I think they hate patients, not in a bad way, but they want to blame the patient. They have this blame game where it's like, it's your fault, you're freaking fat, you're lazy, you don't eat right, you're unhealthy, it's your fault. That's why you have heart disease.
They do that because they want to be able to be in control of of everything about them, right? So they're saying like, if something happens to someone else, it's always, and this is always throughout human history. If you look at it, like, oh, if somebody got sick, it's because they're Jewish, like that's why they got sick, or whatever it is. Like, people back with just racist, whatever, xenophobic, it didn't matter. Like, oh, it's because they're Asian. Oh, it's because they're white. Oh, it's because whatever. And so like, it's just easier to do that and say like, I'm going to be healthy because I do these things. You want to be in control. When in reality, you're just like, well, actually, let's, check your cholesterol. Let's do all these things to actually reduce your risk.
I think it's easier for people to accept it, because like, imagine we tell you, so-and-so's grandma died. Oh, she was so fat and overweight and had diabetes. She had so many diseases. It's like easier to be like, okay, that's all right then. But if it's like, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I think mentally it's easier for people to kind of blame the person in a way for making bad choices. And I'm not saying all of these things are not due to bad choices. Yes.
Right.
Let's say you have the genes for diabetes, becoming overweight and less active and all of that stuff absolutely makes it worse. And doing the opposite absolutely makes it better. But not everyone has those genetics. So they want to blame something though. They almost want to throw the blame onto something that's out of their control, because it's like easier to sleep at night. Or, they don't want to believe in this, genetic thing. Like, look, there are kids born with cholesterols of 300. It's a genetic disorder. They will die before they're 13 if we don't do something about it. Like, what do you want me to do? Just be like, maybe you should stop eating fat. I don't eat fat. I eat celery.
Put some cayenne pepper on your tongue and inject some urine. Oh, you'll be fine.
The cayenne people are something else.
Oh yeah, no, those cayenne people are something. But you know what I see, and I feel for these people. Like I had a patient recently who was like, he's very fit. He was doing everything. He's like, I want to lower my cholesterol. I don't want to take a statin. I don't want to do it. I don't want to take medication. And I was like, he's like, what can I do? I'm like, well, you do this. And he's like, I do all that. I eat oatmeal every day. I have high fiber. I have like no saturated fat in my diet. This. And I'm like, okay, like I'm not a doctor here, but like there's only so much you can do through diet, exercise, lifestyle. Eventually, if you just genetically got fucked, that's kind of the way it is. Like you kind of just have to go, all right, I might need a medication for this, and obviously talk with your doctor, but like, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, definitely. There are some people that did not win the genetic lottery. And unfortunately, some of them are children. The kids with the homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, they come out with 300, 400, 500 cholesterol. I mean, they will never see age 13 or 14 without medication. Just there's nothing you can do diet-wise, health-wise, or you can't run it off. You can't eat it off. There's nothing you can do with a cholesterol that high that's going to get it down to a range that's not going to kill you before your 13th birthday.
And that's why you talk about like the people, like a lot of the people like in the blue zones, or I talk about where, their diet is generally quite healthy, but also there's other things like they have what is the genetic mutation that makes they have a lot. There's at least 10 different genetic mutations. The most common one is the PCSK9. Yes, that's one I was thinking
mutation. There's also the FOXO3 mutation. There's a whole bunch. I have a whole chapter on that as well, but there's a lot of them. I should send you guys a preview copy, a PDF, but there's definitely, lots of genetic mutations within those regions because they're usually isolated regions like Sardinia, Italy, Loma Linda, California, the island of Okinawa. I forget the other one.
There's like one in Costa Rica. Yeah.
Costa Rica, like a little peninsula off of Costa Rica, Nagoya maybe or something like that. But they're all like isolated areas where there's a lot of genetic lack of divergence or differences, and they must have a lot of these. And there have been studies published. And I have all of them listed and live linked in the PDF of the book. But there's a lot of genetics to these people that have longevity genes. So I think that's one thing.
And these genetic mutations, a lot of them lower their cholesterol, right? So their LDL is very low. Absolutely. Plus other things like, maybe telomere function, maybe other stuff. But a lot of them do cause very low levels of LDL, like hypobeta lipoproteinemia. It's a huge word, but it just means you have really low LDL, basically. Really low ApoB, hypobeta lipoproteinemia, low beta lipoproteins in your bloodstream. And so
they have really low LDL and they have no atherosclerosis. As long as they don't do anything else dumb, they'll probably live a very long time.
So I think we've talked enough to get rid of the anti-SIDO oil people. That's perfect. So now we probably have the rest of the foot. But what's left is people like, hey, okay, what do I do? Like, what's my thing? And I would love to just give people like a quick, like little, like on cholesterol, right? Okay, so give us a little, like there's total cholesterol, there's HDL, there's LDL. What do all these things mean?
Right. So when we take your blood out of your body and put it in a test tube, we spin the test tube, right? Mm-hmm. And it stratifies by density. The HDL is the highest density. It's at the bottom. The LDL is a little less, then intermediate, and then very low density, then, whatever. So what we do is we take out those fractions. The first one we take out is the HDL. We measure the cholesterol in those lipoproteins. So, this is like a lipoprotein. It's kind of what they look like. This like structural blue thing is called a ApoB. HDLs have one called the ApoA1.
For those listening, he's holding up what looks like a baseball.
It's an orange baseball
with blue strings, basically. The stitching on it is just this blue string. Imagine the stitching is a blue wrapper, kind of. On the inside of it, and I'll try to describe it as well, there's this yellow stuff and there's this turquoise stuff. The yellow stuff is cholesterol, and the turquoise is triglycerides. Now, some of them can have more triglycerides than others, but the cholesterol is on the inside. So when we take out these lipoproteins, we take it out of the test tube, we spin it down, we take the cholesterol out of them, and we check that amount of cholesterol in that layer of the test tube. So HDL comes out first. What's left over is all the non-HDL, right? Okay. And non-HDL is a very good surrogate for ApoB because everything else basically has a B lipoprotein on it, or a structural protein, I should say. So when you take out the HDL, everything left over is non-HDL. That is probably the closest approximation or surrogate for ApoB if you didn't get an ApoB, because the rest of it depends on calculations. The rest of it, like you check the total cholesterol of what's left over. That's called non-HDL cholesterol. You take out triglycerides, the turquoise stuff on the inside. You divide that by 5, subtract out, the cholesterol that's left, and that's how you end up with calculated LDL. It is calculated at extremes. It's not as accurate. Below 70, it's not super accurate.
Okay.
And if your triglycerides are above about 150, 200, it's not super accurate either, but it's close enough. So we try to get people to check an ApoB or just follow your non-HDL. That's super accurate.
Well, because what I've always heard in during my schooling was like HDL was the good cholesterol, but I feel like in recent years that's kind of gotten some pushback. I've seen it from you, and I've gotten messages from people, how do I increase my HDL? And like, from my understanding, you don't really need to worry about that so much. What's going on there? Right.
You don't need to worry about HDL at all. We call it now highly disappointing lipoprotein.
I like it.
It doesn't seem to matter in terms of outcomes at all.
Okay.
Generally speaking, and I'm going to say this generally because they both do the same thing. Generally speaking, we think, and it's true, the HDL takes the cholesterol out of your arteries. Right. Generally speaking, the LDL puts it back into your arteries.
So you would think you'd want more HDL, right?
The problem is when you measure HDL cholesterol, you're measuring the amount of cholesterol that's in an HDL particle, which if it's high means it's not doing its job. It's not clearing it. So the job of an HDL is to take it back to liver to get rid of it. But if it's still in your bloodstream, that means it's not taking it back to liver to clear it. So it's high. So it means it's dysfunctional.
So it could be dysfunctional if it's high.
Yeah, some people are like, my HDL is 120. What should I do? I'm like, that's probably not a good thing either, because it's high. It means it's not really working. It's not clearing the cholesterol very well. Do we do anything about it? Not really. But the other point I want to make is we generally don't call LDL bad. I mean, when I talk to patients, I do. But also the problem is most HDLs will meet up with LDLs in circulation. They kind of connect together and have sex almost. They connect with this tube, like literally connect with a tube. And they like dock with each other, I guess is the word. And the HDLs hand over cholesterol to the LDLs to help them take it back to the liver. So for a large portion of their life, the LDLs, which are quote unquote bad, are actually doing a lot of good. They're helping the HDLs get rid of cholesterol from your arteries in circulation and take it back to liver to be eliminated. So, and we don't want to just label them good and bad. The cholesterol inside is not either good nor bad. It's just a molecule. When it's in your arteries, it's bad. But when it's in a lipoprotein, it's being transported around either in a direction we want or a direction we don't want. So,
but we don't want it deposited in our artery walls. That's when you get clots. Yeah, that's when bad shit happens.
Exactly. Too much of this there's nowhere to go. It starts depositing in your arteries of your wall. But some people have really high cholesterol. You see it deposit like in the skin under their eyelids. You see it deposit on the tendons, like on their elbows, on the back of their knees, or on the front of their knees, like the patellar tendons or Achilles tendons. It's called familial hypercholesterolemia. I'm sure you could look up the pictures. They're horrific. Sometimes you see like this patches of this white cholesterol almost like oozing out of your eyelids. It's terrible when it's that high. That means there's nowhere else for it left to go. It's already plugged up, all your arteries, and now it's coming out of like the really thin skin, like, near your eyes, under your eyelids and above your eyelids on top and below your eyes.
Ooh. So for general, just kind of recommendation here, I don't know if Rob, if you have yours, I have my a lipid panel that I got a little while ago. You already did a video on this a year ago. I haven't done a new one. I want to do a new one. Haven't done it yet, but I'm just going to give you these numbers and then you can kind of tell me so that people can kind of get a reference and we can talk about what is sort of a normal range. So I got my whole total cholesterol. Do you even look at total cholesterol? Is that even important?
We don't. It doesn't matter, but you generally want that under 150.
Mine's 134.
What is it?
134 for total cholesterol was one.
Yeah, so that's fine. We don't have a target to treat. We don't chase it. We don't really care about it. We just it's just there to help us calculate non-HDL.
And my HDL was 52, which, as we've learned, is meaningless. Basically.
It's meaningless. Yeah, it's a number we generally ignore, except at extremes. If it's 10, it's maybe you got cancer.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. But okay, so this one, I have my ApoB, but first I'll give you my calculated LDL, which is 71.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So normal people, we want them under 100. If you got no risk factors, never had a heart attack, never had a stroke, we generally want you under 100. If you have a risk factor, like let's say you have diabetes or you have hypertension, used to be a smoker or current smoker, whatever, we generally want you under 70 if you've never had a cardiac event. Once you had a cardiac event, whether it's a stent, open heart surgery, stroke, whatever, then we want you under 55.
55?
And if you ever have a repeat cardiac event, we generally want those people under 40.
Wow.
So the numbers to remember are 100, 70, 55, and 40.
Interesting. Okay, I knew under 100 was considered normal, and I know there's talks about like even that being maybe a little high, like 90s being a little high.
It probably is. I mean, mine is 41, and I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it. I've had no heart attacks, no strokes, none of that. The main reason I want it that low is so that I never have one.
I have mine up, but my problem is that...
Oh, yours is in Canadian numbers.
Yeah, mine's in Canadian.
Don't worry. I know I can convert it. It's super easy. Just tell me what's your go for it. I got you.
What are we on?
We're on LDL, HDL,
whatever you want to tell me. The numbers generally in those studies are always in international. It's
my LDL is 1.5.
1.2, 1.5. That's fantastic.
1.5. That's fine.
So for people who don't, that's like 57. For people who don't know, you multiply and or divide by 38.6. So that's 57. That's fantastic.
Definitely.
Are you on meds or not? That's fantastic if that's untreated.
That would be untreated.
That's amazing. That's real good.
Okay. Well, I want to say I got my ApoB checked. And I want to say that is a little bit lower. 63. How's that?
No, that's great. Those two generally track together. That's called concordance when they track together. So that's real good. The ApoB is slightly more accurate and tracks better with the disease and risk and outcomes. So 63 below 70 is considered amazing on the ApoB. Let me give you I think that's below the 5th percentile, to be honest with you. Okay, so 55 is the 5th percentile cutoff point. So you're super close. So you're probably around 7th percentile. I would just leave it, maybe even less, 6th. Yeah. I would just leave it alone. That's fantastic.
Okay.
My ApoB is 0.65.
0.65. Let me do a quick calculation. That's real low. 25, brother. That's amazing.
25, yeah.
Yeah, that's real good. That's below the 5th percentile. You're in the second percentile. 2%.
Don't have to
tooth percentile.
He might have to worry about being a Canadian, but he doesn't have to worry about heart attacks, is basically what it sounds.
Yeah, you have actually hypo-beta lipoproteinemia. If you don't do anything dumb, you probably live to 100. I mean, we don't have the people are like, well, you don't know that. You don't have the data to prove that. Well, look, first of all, we've never had ways of checking this. People are like, well, you keep saying people with a PCSK9 mutation and hypo-beta lipoproteinemia are going to live to 100. We don't have data. Okay, look, but we didn't have ways of checking this before.
Right.
Now that we know all this and we have the genetic testing and we know who has this, because people who are over 100 now were born in 1900, 1901, 1920, whatever it might be. They didn't have this testing back then. We can do it now, and they've gone to these places and checked some of these people. But people with your kind of levels, Rob, most generally speaking, like I said, I'm not going to say absolutely because, who the hell knows? You could have liver cancer. I don't know. But people, generally speaking, with that low of ApoB, almost impossible to have atherosclerosis, and will probably live a very, very long life, assuming you continue to work out, eat healthy, do all that kind of stuff. Don't smoke, don't drink, whatever.
Well, it's a good thing that Paul Saladino looks healthier than me.
Yeah, he looks, but look at his arteries. His LDL is like 200, which in Canadian, that's like 4.5.
That's
which is like insanely high.
Oh, okay. Oh, but another test I learned because I got it done. You only apparently needed it once. I learned it from Dr. Lipid. What's his actual name?
Thomas Dayspring.
Dayspring. I was just blanking on the name.
He's actually the author, the second author on my book.
Oh, okay.
He's like the co-editor, co-author. He's amazing.
Yeah, no, I've listened to a few of his podcasts that he's gone on with other people. But he said to try and get your Lp(a) checked, like protein A, because that's like a genetic mutation. And like just if you either have it or you don't. And mine was came back as 23, which it says under 75 is normal.
In milligrams or millimoles? Nanomoles or milligrams?
Nanomoles.
Oh, that's pretty low. So normally under 125 is normal for that. So you're fantastic. You're good.
Okay, so and that's just something you check like once in your lifetime, just to make sure you don't have it.
Mainly to make sure you don't have it, and to like have first degree relatives check. Like if you had it, and we got to check all your kids, brothers, sisters, siblings, parents, all that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Well, that's something I don't have a number for.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could definitely check it, Rob, because your LDL and ApoB could be fantastic, but if your lipoprotein A is super elevated, it's not good. I'll show you what that looks like. So here's a normal lipoprotein, and for those of you who are not on YouTube, we will post it. But let's say you see a baseball in my hand that's orange. This is not what they look like in real life. They're probably not orange. They're probably not orange at all. They're probably like an off-white or mauve maybe. But this is a normal LDL particle. The ones that have this kringle on it, and I just put like a aluminum strip around it for, demonstration purposes. But if they have this little kringle around it, those are lipoprotein A's. They're heavier and more dense, and they're 3 to 6 times more atherogenic. So these will infiltrate. They will infiltrate your arteries at a higher rate and cause earlier and earlier atherosclerosis. These are like the 50-year-olds and 40-year-olds who never smoked, never had heart disease, and like, oh my God, what happened? How did I end up with triple bypass? Like, yeah, that's weird. Or aortic valve replacements. It makes your aortic valve tighter and tighter and tighter over time, way faster, and you don't really have any other reason for it.
Because, listen, I'm just going to say, we talk about like diet and exercise. It's all very important, but like heart disease, number one cause of death, right? Like in the country, worldwide, right? Like this is the big, and it's gotten, like we said, it's kind of, we're understanding, maybe getting better. Back in the day, it was just kind of like, oh, well, but it's still like the number. This is super important to make sure you keep your cholesterol. It's the number one killer, but cancer is about to surpass it. Cancer deaths did come down too, but they're kind of creeping back up again. But heart disease deaths are still coming down. But technically, as of now, still the number one killer, but pretty soon it's probably not going to be.
Well, and of course, we're going to see an increase in cancer deaths just because people are living longer.
Right. And then they have to die of something eventually, right? So that's the other thing with like reverse causality. A lot of these people, I'm sure you've seen them too. They're like, well, people with higher LDL live the longest. I'm like, come on.
Well, yeah, because cancer like drops your LDL, right? Like, doesn't cancer just like plummet your cholesterol?
For example, if somebody comes to me, I mentioned this a little earlier, they come to me and their HDL is like 10 and their LDL is like 22 and they're not on meds. They're not on anything, like, something's wrong here. They have cancer. They usually have a lymphoma, leukemia, or CML, AML, like any of the blood cancers can cause your HDL and LDL to be super, super low, or any other cancer that's end stage. Let's say you have liver cancer, lung cancer, brain cancer, whatever, really end stage cancer. You're super malnourished. You have no appetite. You just kind of lay there wasting away in bed. You have no muscle, no fat. Like you're just at death's doorstep. Those people have the lowest LDL cholesterols, and these people are like, well, people with low LDL die so much. Like, no, they're not dying from the LDL. They're dying from cancer. They just also happen to have very low LDL. In statistics, you guys know this, but maybe for the audience, that's called reverse causality. A didn't cause B, B caused A. The cancer made the LDL low.
Yeah, that's like saying chemo kills you. Like people who are getting cancer, people who have cancer get chemo, but the chemo isn't causing the like.
As soon as my mom started chemo, she died. Like,
she had cancer.
She also had a malignant, deadly cancer where 90% of people generally die. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's true. And then the other one is like, what about this Swedish cohort study where the people who lived to over 100, there was 1,400 of them left, and they all had high cholesterol. Like, okay, that's survivorship bias. First of all, they didn't check people's cholesterols in that cohort till they were above 65. So you're already self-selecting the ones that are probably going to live the longest, especially since they're born in 1920 at this point. Back then, if you made it to 40, that was great. Made it past 50, that's amazing. So the ones that were going to die of heart disease probably already died. Second of all, if you look at the supplemental tables in that Swedish cohort, the people who'd lived to 100, their cholesterol was 3 points higher than the ones who weren't. So they were like 203 versus 200.
Gotcha.
Like, come on, you really think that's like a difference? Like, you guys are insane. There's no difference between a 203 and a 200 in terms of cholesterol, longevity, living disease-free and heart disease-free. Like, you guys are just insane. You're just looking for stupid stuff. They're like, yeah, but it's an aggregate population. I'm like, dude, it's only 1,400 people. Like, literally, of that study you picked, there were 70,000 people that started. Of the ones that made it to 100, there were 1,400 of them left, and the one out of you measured them, their cholesterol was just 3 points different than the ones who died at 95 or 80 or 85. And, they all made it past 65 because they didn't even check their cholesterol till they were past 65 anyways.
People,
so
they already have like a confirmation bias. They're just looking for something. They're just looking for something that's right. So, but
the problem is that they spread this and it sounds like it's truthful.
Right.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like you get this doctor on there, it's like a gynecologist. He's like, well, look at this study, folks. We've got these people that live to 100 and they have the highest cholesterol
know exactly
ever.
what you're talking about.
Come on, dude. Why are you, first of all, talking about cholesterol? You're a gynecologist. You should be talking about vaginal secretions and, bacteria in vaginas. I don't talk about that stuff because I would be talking out of my butt. But I don't know. Some people just
it's so great. But for the normal people who are like, okay, I understand that this is a problem. Like what, so we talked about saturated fat, right? Like you reduce, your saturated fat. That's something you can do. You can increase your fiber, right? That will, have some effect on cholesterol.
So there's 11 or 12 different things you can do to lower your cholesterol naturally. Okay. This is like, people are like, you just push statins. Like, dude, I have an entire series of how to lower your cholesteral naturally.
How do you do it naturally?
Just don't watch it. Like, no one watches the good stuff. They're like, you just push statins. Like, go watch the other videos. There's like 1,000 of them. Well, 3,000 now. But there's about 11 or 12 ways you can lower your cholesterol naturally. The first one, which has the biggest effect size.
Yes. Let's go from like top to bottom. Like, what are we doing?
The biggest effect size is what you mentioned. Just reduce saturated fat intake. It depends on what diet you're coming from. Obviously, if you're coming from a diet that's very high in saturated fat, you are going to notice the biggest difference in terms of your cholesterol, even up to like 20 to 30% sometimes. If you're like one of these butter chuggers, you're going to notice a significant difference in your cholesterol levels.
Right. So we're talking butter, like fatty meats, like bacons and stuff.
Any fat that is solid at room temperature is saturated. Okay. It's a super easy way to remember it. Most of them are animal, but there are tricky ones. So you're talking like butter, bacon, cheese, lard, ghee, tallow. The tricky one is coconut oil because it's not animal.
I've seen some kind of like mixed stuff on that, but at the end of the day, it is still a saturated fat. So, it still can.
There is mixed stuff on whether it's cold pressed and how truly virgin it is and all that, but still the American Heart Association final decision, like guidelines, was like just avoid tropical oils. Palmitic and coconut are basically the two. They are solid at room temperature. They have been shown. So there have been substitution studies where they take butter and they replace it isocalorically with olive oil and or coconut oil.
Oh, okay.
The substitution from butter to olive oil reduced LDL cholesterol the most, and the substitution from butter to coconut oil did reduce it, just not as much as going to a PUFA or MUFA, right? Okay. Mono or polyunsaturated fat. And olive oil would be a little more mono. There is saturated, obviously about 10% of it is, but going to like canola oil, which is actually even more mono, it's more poly, they actually had lower LDL cholesterols. They've done like head-to-heads between olive oil and canola oil, and it actually reduced LDL more. Because
I know it causes all the inflammation in the body and makes you completely inflamed.
Which has never been proven. They've actually checked inflammatory markers, and it has not been proven to be true. They actually did a study for all the seed oil haters. They did a study where people consumed 500 extra calories for just 2 weeks during the holiday season between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm sorry,
500 calories is a lot.
Yeah, between Christmas, the 10 days between New Year's and Christmas, they had people consume an extra 500 calories of pure canola oil, linoleic acid, the one they hate.
Yeah.
They actually lost weight and for 6 months had lower weight than the placebo arm. So eating 500 calories more of linoleic acid, for whatever reason, caused more weight loss or less weight gain during the holiday seasons, but sustained and better weight loss over the next 6 months too. But back to our how do you lower your cholesterol? So reducing saturated fat is going to be your biggest, difference, effect size, what have you. Other things that help, sort of like you said, more soluble and insoluble fibers, that helps. Part of it is it kind of binds up the fat and maybe makes you poop it out. Part of it is like plant sterols that are in the fibers, which is another one. Number 3 would be plant sterols. When you consume plant sterols as actual plants and not supplements, they compete with cholesterol for absorption. Now they as long as you're eating it as an actual plant. If you're taking Benecol and the actual supplements of this stuff, it can be a problem. There are some people who are hyperabsorbers of sterols. The plant ones, when you take it at such a high dose, it's called acetylcysterolemia or phytosterolemia. You actually get really bad atherosclerosis from eating like Benecol and whatnot, 2-3 grams a day of actual plant sterols. So you just want to eat it as plants. That's very helpful. Eating more fruits and vegetables, those two actually help. That is probably like number 4. Less smoking makes a big difference.
Smoking, yeah.
Obviously for various reasons. Exercise helps. It doesn't lower cholesterol a lot. You'd have to exercise any crazy amount to actually lower cholesterol. But like I said, if we're stacking multiple things, every little bit can help. So adding exercise can help. The amount of exercise you'd have to do to actually lower cholesterol is very difficult.
But exercise is good for a lot of reasons. You stack it up, it's good. Exercise, please.
Right. Exercise for sure. And obviously for longevity, endurance training and lifting weights both have been shown to improve longevity in no matter how you measure it, whether it's VO2 max, 6-minute walk test, how long you last on a Bruce protocol on a treadmill, all those kind of things definitely help. How fast you can jog a mile, whatever, or 60, 100 meters in Rob's case. So those things matter. Social determinants of health also matter. Like, do you live in a food desert? Do you have income? Do you have good medical insurance? What is your social conditions? Genetics, obviously, you can't really change those. There was a couple more. I'm trying to think of them now off the top of my head. I think we've been probably 10 or 12.
Right. But I know dietary cholesterol, we've kind of gone away from that being as much of an issue. Now there are people who, again, like you kind of talked about hyperabsorbers with plant sterols, there are people who are hyperabsorbers of dietary cholesterol, but in general, it doesn't have much of an effect.
It depends. So, everything is, it depends. Sorry.
Right.
But if you want to be honest and not lie to people. So the 2015 guidelines, the dietary guidelines, at least the US ones, made a mistake in the way that they worded it. They said dietary cholesterol is not a concern for overconsumption. So people took it as, well, that means you can eat all you want.
Right.
They have had to correct that and backtrack. But what they meant, and they had to reissue a couple more statements saying, listen, we said it's not an issue for overconsumption because people in the United States don't eat that much. Men eat 282 milligrams a day. Women were 272 milligrams a day. There's no concern that we're going to be eating 400 or 300 or whatever. So people ran with it you could eat all the dietary cholesterol you want. It's not a concern. But they're no, it's not a concern for overconsumption. It is a concern in general, just not that much. Now, there have been a lot of influencers and people that say, oh my God, you can eat all you want. Peter Attia does that and some other people. Probably not going to be a big deal, but the new guidelines, the 2020 to 2025 guidelines have come back and said, keep dietary cholesterol to as low as possible. Literally the exact phrasing was as low as possible. The reason is there's lots of studies out there on dietary cholesterol. Now, if you are a hyperabsorber, you're going to absorb more dietary cholesterol, but in general, you may synthesize less. So if you compensate from one end, or if we put you on a statin, for example, your body will try to absorb a little more. It can't keep up because it's not going to be able to, because the absorption mechanism is not that potent. So we generally tell people try to keep it under 300 milligrams a day. In the US, and I'm assuming Canada is very similar, most people probably don't eat over 300 a day. One egg, for example, is 187 milligrams. I guess,
which is why generally the American Heart Association recommends 1 egg per day, which I like to only say that in videos so people can go, I eat 20 eggs a minute. What are you talking about? Gives people the opportunity because they flip the fuck out when you say shit like that.
Yeah, Eddie Abu is another one of these bizarre people. But 1 to 2 eggs a day, probably not going to make a huge difference. Shrimp, for example. So the problem is cholesterol is found in weird foods like octopus, things we generally don't eat. Eggs,
shrimp.
For sure.
Eggs.
Shrimp, 100 grams of shrimp has about 180 as well. 180, 189 milligrams.
Basically, what I saw in the research was that when you go super, it's kind of like a sigmoidal curve, kind of like saturated fats, where if you have if you're a vegan, a plant-based, where you just know dietary cholesterol, and then you add in dietary cholesterol, it can possibly increase your cholesterol. Yeah, it will go up. But if you go from 2 eggs a day to 3 eggs or whatever, you go in these shifts where we kind of normally sit, it's not going to be as big of a difference.
Right. Definitely depends on what diet you're coming from. That's how it is for most things.
Right.
But if you're coming from a diet that's mostly plant-based with almost no dietary cholesterol and you start adding it, for sure, it's going to go up. and at least, transiently, probably maybe over time it'll adjust. If you come from a diet that's a lot of saturated fat to begin with, it's probably not going to make a huge difference. Like if you're already downing butter and ribeyes
and you add another couple eggs,
cheeseburgers, putting a poached egg on a cheeseburger, probably not going to be the end of the world. But it's still more saturated fat because there's saturated fat in eggs too. The yolk,
true.
And the one thing I will tell people, like the white part of an egg is actually pure protein.
Yeah, it's just
like if you're looking for a food that is a good protein to calorie ratio, let's say you're cutting and you're trying to lose weight, if you want the most protein for your buck without a lot of calories, egg whites is really good. Whey protein, certain ones, depending on what else they add to it, can be fantastic. Faya Greek yogurt is another one of these. It's like almost pure protein.
I will tell you one of my favorite like vegan sources though. You ever tried TVP, textured vegetable protein? It's a little weird and it can be hard to find, but it's made from soy and it's like pretty much just protein and fiber. Like those are the only two things. And
those are both good.
Yeah, exactly. They're both great. Like I do it instead of like a ground beef for like, like tacos or like whatever you're making, that sort of thing, like a chili. I'll just add TVP to it. Adds a bunch of protein, some fiber, almost
How do you
no
get
fat.
It? Where do you get it from?
So you usually get it in the baking section. It'll be like, it's weird. It's like with
baking.
like the flours and stuff like that.
That is weird.
Yeah, it is very weird. Look up TVP, textured vegetable protein. A lot of people don't know about it. It's like, I have to look up the exact numbers, but yeah, it's almost all protein and some fiber. And you have to season it well because it doesn't taste like really anything. You just kind of rehydrate it. It's just got a very bland taste to it. It just doesn't taste like much. And it's very cheap.
So another thing you brought up, which is important, is the substitution. So like let's say somebody wants to make chili. Do you know that if you use ground turkey, no one's going to know the difference? or if you make burgers, if you mix like, let's say 20% beef, 80% ground turkey, no one is going to know the difference, or just buy the 97%, fat-free beef if you want, but like, it's not that hard to reduce saturated fat intake. If that's your goal, you just have to be like cognizant of it and be like trying to do it. Right. So there are lots of substitutions you can do, things like that really reduce saturated fat intake. But like out of all of these things, the single most important thing is reducing saturated fat. The other stuff is all like a 1% here, 2% there.
Gotcha.
None of it is as important as reducing.
So it's like genetics is the most important, which you can't do anything about. And then you reduce your saturated fat.
Like familial hypercholesterolemia, you just got to be on meds. I mean, you should do all the other stuff anyways, but it's malpractice not to be on meds, certain types. The rest of your genetics, if somebody has polygenic, which means like multiple little genetic things here and there that gives you a cholesterol, let's say of like 120, 130, it's high. It's not insanely high, but those people with, certain lifestyle modifications, cutting saturated fat, exercising, cutting smoking, losing weight, things like that will make a difference. So that's the vast majority of people. I'd say 90% of people have some polygenic, baseline cholesterol.
Because it seems like to me that like why do humans have such a high cholesterol? Like it just seems like when you compare it to like other animals, it seems like we just have. I've kind of looked into some things on this. Like we just kind of have like, what is it when a baby, like your children, like we need the most cholesterol, right? And our cholesterol is like what, like 60 or something? Like I don't remember what it is.
No, not even. So a newborn is. And in utero even, they're making brain, right? They're making myelin sheaths.
They make brain good.
Your brain is like mostly cholesterol, right?
Yeah.
And the brain cholesterol has nothing to do with circulating cholesterol. So all
people always say that, like you need more cholesterol in your blood because everything's made of cholesterol, and you're like, every cell can do that. Can make its own cholesterol. Anyway,
so that's another thing. Like they want to like say, well, don't you need cholesterol for your brain? Like your brain makes its own cholesterol.
Yeah. It
has nothing to do with circulating cholesterol. And the cholesterol in your brain actually has a half-life of 5 years. A lot of Liam's cholesterol in his brain was from infancy. Like, the half-life.
So what do babies, what are their cholesterols like when they're born?
A newborn's cholesterol is between 20 and 40. And I'm talking
24. What, like, why is our cholesterol when we're older so much higher? What the hell?
Because people are like, are you saying evolution got it wrong? Well, evolution didn't care for you to live past your reproductive years.
Evolution, the point of it is for you to pass on your genes. As soon as you do that, you can drop dead. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, goodbye. After the age 40, 45, see you later. The mummies, people are like, no, we didn't have heart disease 100 years ago. Are you like retarded? I'm sorry. Are you like an idiot? Like, what do you mean? Like, first of all, nobody lived past 35 or 40 anyways, but they all died of heart disease. Like, literally, that's what killed them. Like, if you go look at the mummies, and I have a whole chapter on the mummies in my cholesterol book, too. I got to send you guys all these links because there's like 700 links linked in this book that you could click on and read for yourself. But they did a cohort study on the mummies, about 142 of them. And they looked at, like, what did they die of? They did all this fancy imaging of their hearts. They concluded that all of them basically had heart disease. The average age was 42, and they died of heart disease, and that was what killed them. So people are like, well, back then, like, come on, people. Really?
And that's the thing, is like richer people back then, like the pharaohs and stuff, they were the ones able to eat all the meat and probably got more
their servants, and their servants did not. They ate mostly the plants, and they actually had longer lifespans than the actual gods. They were actually gods.
Yeah, right.
They lived longer than their gods because they did not eat the
long enough to get buried
butter.
with them.
Some of them, absolutely, and that's how they knew the difference. They had longer bone ages and whatever, carbon dating or whatever.
So just basic. That's why I call myself the plant slant. So after the blue zones, just like focus on plant foods. I still eat everything else, all that stuff, but like just beans and nuts.
You probably are what's called a flexitarian, where you mostly, and I would consider myself that. You eat basically mostly plants, fruit, vegetables, fiber, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Maybe a piece of salmon here and there, maybe a chicken breast here and there, whatever. I do try to get enough protein, so I do a lot of whey.
Yeah, I get like shrimp or like yogurt or whatever it is. Right. Sure.
Greek yogurt, whatever you have to do to get the protein without the stuff that you.
But I just ate some lentil tacos with like mushrooms and onions, and like that's my kind of thing.
Chickpeas are amazing.
Oh man, chickpeas are so good.
And a lot of that is Mediterranean cuisine. Like, a lot of people are like, how do you know? Like, my parents came from Syria. That is on the Mediterranean. And 3 of my grandparents lived to 105, and one of them was 106.
Wow, really?
So, they didn't have exact records back then because it was like a country that was third world. I know we don't say that anymore, but it was a third world country. And they didn't have perfect records, but we know when our grandpa was 97 for sure. And then he lived at least another 6 or 7 years. We don't know exactly when he was born, but we know he's definitely well over.
We might not have his ApoB, but we know he was doing pretty well.
Funny thing is, like, the other grandpa, so 3 of them lived to over 100. Our other grandpa was really bad diabetic, smoker, didn't really take care of himself, died at 51 of a massive heart attack. So, that kind of stuff makes a difference. Genetics plus stuff you do.
Right, exactly. I always heard the phrase like genetics loads the gun while your environment fires it. So you can try not fire the gun. Right. See, okay, Rob, in America, everything is about guns. So we have to bring it all back to that, just in case you were confused over there what was going on. It all has to be about firearms.
Your genetics loads the gun, and then your environment pulls the trigger or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But like the other thing that I think a lot of people, they don't want to accept that a lot of this is genetically determined for whatever reason. Like, why don't you just tell people to eat right? Like, dude, who tells people to eat wrong? Like, am I suggesting for you to eat like poop or donuts?
Testicle supplements.
Like, I don't sell testicle supplements, but I'm telling you to eat right, and that you don't need the testicle supplements. But like, where do you get that I'm telling you you have to eat wrong? Like, I don't.
But it's because we say, because earlier you said it's okay to eat a Pop-Tart, which means you are wrong, and you told people they should only eat Pop-Tarts. That's how it works.
Yeah, and like when I posted this video, I posted a video explaining Dr. Mark Haub's Twinkie diet. Literally, the head of nutrition at Kansas State University wanted to prove a point and ate only Twinkies,
Oreos, like Doritos. Like, he took like a protein mix or something like that.
He drank 100 grams of protein a day to not lose muscle because he's the head of nutrition. He's not an idiot. Yeah. But he ate only Doritos, Twinkies,
he lost
Oreos.
27 pounds, I believe.
28 pounds in 10
28
weeks.
Pounds? Yeah.
And they're like, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, stop. I'm reporting on a study. Yeah. I'm not telling you this is optimal.
And his cholesterol improved. Like, his LDL went down, I'm pretty sure.
All of his markers improved with the weight loss. So I'm telling you, and this lady went after me. She's like, you're just an idiot. You don't know anything. I'm like, lady, This is not me.
It's because when you say that, people hear you telling them that they should only eat Twinkies and Oreos. And it's like, that's not what we're saying. We're trying to prove a point here.
Yeah.
I'm reporting a study to you that was done by the head of nutrition at Kansas State University. So I tagged him on Twitter. I was like, Dr. Mark Halb did this. You're welcome to argue with him. And I tagged him on there. She just shut up.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm like, I'm not saying this is optimal. It's like these people, they're like, well, you can eat keto and lose weight. Sure. Doesn't mean it's optimal. They're like, well, you don't need carbohydrates. Name one nutrient that is essential. It's not carbs. I'm like, I know that.
Gosh, yes.
I'm not telling you have to do that. But
there's so many times you get the comments that are, you always tell us that everything's good for us. Why don't you tell us something that's bad for us?
I know. Overconsumption of anything, that's bad for you. Don't do that.
We literally don't tell you that something's good for you. We tell you that you can eat it in moderation.
You're saying aspartame is good for me, you idiot. Like, what are you talking about? I said it's not harmful.
They think you mean you should order a truckload of aspartame and try to consume all of it in 24 hours. But it's like bizarre they have. But the problem is, you know why? I think part of it is all these other influencers are so extreme. Like Bobby Flav is like, don't ever eat this. And then like 10 minutes later, like, don't ever eat this. It's like they want us to be like, don't ever eat this. Like, wait, why? Like,
why everybody can only think in extremes now.
But if you have rules, then people have to follow them. Like, that's the thing. That's how you get followers, is you got to have rules.
Rob and I were talking a little bit off air before you jumped on. I think the extreme stuff does so well on social media because it's insane. Like if I go online and I say, you need to inject your own urine into your eyeballs, that video will get 1 million hits. You'll get billions of hits and views and whatever. But if I go online and be like, listen, you just got to eat in moderation, try to exercise, lift some weights, ride a bike, do something normal, you know, the video is going to get like 2 follows, right? 2 views.
Because the normal information is boring, man. We need that. We've talked on so many episodes. We have so many ideas for how to grift people when we eventually give all this up. We've come up with tons of stuff that we're going to start selling. That's just
you could sell urine eyeball injectors.
We already have what do we have, Rob? Dragon water.
One of my patients asked me today. One of my patients today was like, well, you know what, doc, why don't you sell heart supplements? I was like, first of all, what would I possibly sell that is not illegal to give you over the counter, like supplements that would help your heart? Like, give me an idea. He's like, well, you know, like statins.
I know, right? Just sell statins. Because as you said, I've heard you say many times, if a supplement works, they take it and they turn it into a medication and they regulate it and they test it.
So like your audience might not know, but literally every cardiac medication started out as something in nature. Like you're anti-nature because you can't patent and make money off it. Like, hold on. Yeah. Let me tell you, the most prescribed, it's not even a prescription anymore, but the most used medication in cardiology is oil of wintergreen. They're like, no, you can't make money off it. I was like, stop. It's called aspirin. It's salicylic acid. It's salicylate. That's aspirin. It's oil of wintergreen. It's from the bark of a willow tree. People were getting stomach aches and headaches. They'd go like chew on a stick, sit in a corner, and they got better because they absorbed it through their mouth, right? They're like, well, okay, fine, you know. And then I'm like, well, how about lisinopril? Do you know where lisinopril came from? It's like the most prescribed blood pressure medication. It's super potent. It's amazing. It's the viper venom. It's like viper venom. They're like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's 2. Like, no, there's hundreds. Yeah. Like statin medications, like you guys are just statin pushers. Like, no, first of all, statin is yeast. It literally came from mold, just like penicillin. They're like, really? Well, you know, why you guys patent it? Like, so you don't die when you go like eat yeast. Like part of yeast, like the problem with red yeast rice is, you know, there's the part of it that is lovastatin, but the other part of it can kill your kidneys. Like, you know, do you really want to be taking an unregulated substance?
But natural good, artificial bad, Dr. Allo, natural good, artificial bad. That's basically where we've gotten to in social media.
All these new injectable medications that cause weight loss and help diabetes, they come from the saliva of a lizard called the Gila monster in Arizona. Like, oh, give me Ozempic, give me Mounjaro. Like, okay, but you're asking me for saliva of a lizard. Like, what do you guys not understand? Like, there's so many other, you know, examples. I go through these in some of my videos, but all of these come from nature. They're like, well, you don't sell cayenne pepper because you can't patent it. I'm like, dude, I swear to God, if it worked, I would patent it and it would be a medication and we would make billions off of it. They just don't get it. They think it's a conspiracy to keep them unhealthy and harm them and keep these big secrets from them. They're like, well, other cardiologists disagree with you. I'm like, name one. Like, go ahead.
I always find it hilarious because as soon as you look at any of these socialized medicine countries, that whole doctors are in it for the money and they're out to poison you and stuff, it just falls apart. You don't get that here.
You know, Dr. Ids gets that all the time. Like, you're just social. I'm like, Dr. Ids is in fucking England. Like, they have social medicine. Like, what is he?
They make $20 a day.
Like, what the fuck? What are you talking about?
No,
meanwhile, like, Dr. Ken Berry here is fucking telling everybody, like, oh, if you have high cholesterol, you need to go on keto. And I'm just like, holy shit. Like,
literally, he posted a video in the airport on his way to a keto conference. He's like, Johnny here just had 2 stents put in his heart. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of his accent. I shouldn't do that. But he's like, Johnny here just got 2 stents put. Well, it was kind of funny. Johnny here got 2 stents put in his heart, and the best thing you can do, Johnny, is start eating some butter and bacon and cholesterol. Like, dude, what? You just killed Johnny. Like, Johnny is dead. Like, what are you telling Johnny? Like, why are you telling him this? There's no data to support what you're saying other than, like, maybe you're saying.
But he's the guy that sells the supplements. He's the guy that sells niacin and all those other things that people say.
You'll notice most of these carnivore crazy docs, and I'm not just picking on the carnivores, there's lots of them. They have their medical licenses were all suspended because they're harming patients on purpose. Like, you can't just get your medical license taken away for killing somebody by accident. It happens, right? But if you are doing it on purpose multiple times after multiple warnings, then you get suspended. Like, literally,
like, it takes a lot for your medical license, right? Like, as a doctor for it to get revoked.
Yeah, it's impossible. Like, unless you are literally insane trying to kill people, like injecting them with your own urine or HIV or something insane like that. You know, I mean, it's nuts. But then they're like, well, he said it's okay to eat butter.
Well, he's a doctor and he said it. Like, holy shit.
No, but the best is like, oh, well, other cardiologists disagree with it. I'm like, okay, name one. And then they never respond. I'm like, just name one. Just pick me one single cardiologist that does not think that cholesterol causes heart disease. Like, and then the only one they can come up with is Asim Malhotra. I'm like, they kicked him out of England because he's insane. Like, he has psychological issues. Did you hear his interview on Rogan? He's nuts. But
was he on Rogan? Oh shit! Of course he was. Of course he was.
You know, Rogan is like he gets the crazy. He gets the craziest of the crazy. You know, like normal cardiologists would not. It's not clickbait.
That's, you know, because again, it's boring. It's boring. Like, people are just.
Real medicine is like, if you follow me around for a day, it's not that exciting. I mean, it might be for some people because you get to see cool stuff, but it's not that exciting.
I mean, I'd be all for that.
I've seen it for a day, but like, I get your point. Like, if you're like, oh, this is it, like, it's just you know.
I mean, come on down. I'll be more than happy to take you around. But it's like, we tell people to eat right, lose weight. You know, try diet and exercise. If it's not working for you, you know, we have other solutions. We can force you to lose weight. Now, like, literally, I can make you lose weight pretty much effortlessly with the kinds of medications and therapeutics we have now. You don't even need gastric bypass anymore. You literally just can sit at home on your butt and lose weight without even trying. And I can force you to do it. It's not even hard anymore.
But it's definitely you making money from the big pharma and not these other doctors that are selling supplements.
I know.
No. And that's the funny thing is, don't you think big supplement pays these idiots? Like, they are big supplement.
Well, hell, I love people
like, if you're making $100 million selling testicle weed or whatever the hell it is. Like,
testicle weed. I love testicle weed.
Isn't that money? No,
I love the people that bring up David Sinclair and nicotinamide mononucleotide. And they're always like, well, this guy is like, He's a specialist in genetics and longevity and stuff, and he tells you to take NMN. Who do you think owns the patent for NMN? David Sinclair's company.
And he sells tons of supplements. But you know who you should get on the show? James Brenner is an actual longevity real expert. He goes after Sinclair all the time. He's like, nothing this guy says is real. He's like, I've asked to debate him a million times. He just keeps blocking me on every platform. But James Brenner, he was on Simon Hill. You know Simon Hill, The Proof? Yeah, he was on that show. And literally, if you watch that episode or listen to it's a podcast too.
It's a good podcast.
He goes after Sinclair. He's like, listen, this guy's just full of, he's using one cell organisms and extrapolating it to humans, like not even rats. At least some people are doing like mammal studies, like on rats and rabbits. This guy's like in a totally different universe with his bizarreness. But yeah, he's like selling all this stuff, New York Times bestseller, all that. That's like, I think people need to be careful with the money, like big supplement, big cattle, big agriculture, big whatever. But then like you got this poor little family doctor that's like, you know, I'm trying to help you, but you want to believe in some weird conspiracy theory thinking that I'm getting paid to like pretend to help you, but really try to kill you, which is
that's
really
why they always say, like, follow the money. It's like, it's money with seed oils or statins or whatever. And then you're just like, but what about like the supplement industry? Like, that's just as bad, if not worse. The
supplement industry is almost $1 trillion. I mean, the last estimate I saw was like 750 billion or something like that. It's sad that people buy into this stuff.
Yeah, and with Sinclair, he has that infamous thing where he did all this genetic or bio testing, and his biological age was like 20 something. And who do you think owns the company that did that biological testing?
Not his.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you guys a funny and crazy story. One of my friends sells supplements, right? And he did this all throughout college when Amazon kind of first started. He would send the label to China. They would label these sugar pill bottles and send him 5,000 of them, every month or so. First, he labeled them like testosterone booster, didn't really get a lot of sales. Then it was like B12, B complex something, didn't work. Then they finally picked some gimmicky thing that actually worked, and he sold out. So he just kept doing that. Just buy the same pills. We'd send him a different label each time, call him something, and people would buy it. The problem is people would leave reviews and say, like, this worked. The placebo effect is super potent. A lot of people, I'm sure you guys get these people all the time, like, well, I did cayenne pepper and it worked. Like, first of all, what do you mean by it worked? Second of all, even if you know you're getting the placebo, there have been studies done where people know they are receiving the placebo, and they still reported better outcomes. They say they felt better. The nausea went away, or whatever it might be.
Whenever you take a supplement for something, that already means you're like, I want something to work. So maybe I'm going to do other things as well. I'm going to take the supplement, but I'm also going to eat a little bit more healthy. I'm going to exercise more. And so all these things go together. And then you can't say just it's because of that. Like, it drives me crazy.
But then they'll look at a medication and find some obscure side effect that like 0.001% of the population got, and they're like, oh, but I don't want to get that. Or like the best, I had a patient one time. This is funny. You guys will love this. This patient was like, 400 some odd pounds. I'm like, hey, we've got your cholesterol down, your diabetes is sort of under control, not really. Do you want to try one of these new weight loss meds? And he looks at me and he goes, I heard they have a lot of side effects.
No, yeah.
And I looked and I was like, okay, well, being 450 pounds also has a lot of side effects. So, like, pick, do you want to stay 450 pounds and possibly die of, need knee replacements and joint replacements and heart attack, strokes, blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, all that stuff? Or do you want to take these medications that like less than 1% of people get anything weird from it and possibly lose 350 pounds or whatever it might be? So I don't know. Sometimes they just watch too much Jillian Michaels and Netflix.
Jillian Michaels.
Well, she literally
when I was looking into finasteride, one of the side effects is erectile dysfunction. And there was a study on it where they had a group that they actually told erectile dysfunction was one of the side effects, and another group that they didn't tell anything. And the group that had been told had more erectile dysfunction. The group that didn't get told had no erectile dysfunction.
That's called the Drucebo effect. Like, you're on the drug, you get the Drucebo effect. Like, people who are on statins think they are going to get myalgias or muscle aches because they think statins give you muscle aches, so they report it. But a lot of times when they do the studies, they just tell them they're on the statins when they're really not on it. And similarly, they report the side effects. But it's just weird that like people are willing to risk their lives not losing weight, taking weird supplements that might not contain, like turmeric, for example. And I'm sure you guys had the supplement lady on not that long ago. But there have been studies on turmeric that show that most turmeric, it comes from India, and it's very contaminated. It actually includes like liver toxins that could cause liver failure, but people are downing it as if it's like harmless. People think supplements are completely harmless.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
My friend from medical school was the Hydroxycut spokesperson. You guys, Rob might remember Hydroxycut.
I remember Hydroxycut.
Yeah, it was this guy, super muscular hockey player, but he's a doctor now. He was a spokesperson for it. He was on the commercials on TV. Literally, it was like ephedra. And it was back when ephedra was legal, or technically legal, but it was ephedra and something else.
Technically legal is my favorite kind of legal.
Yeah, 3 people died of liver failure because people thought you could just take as much of it as you want because it's natural and it's a supplement. They took so much of it that they killed their livers, and he stopped being their spokesperson. Was like, this is insane. It's no longer allowed to contain that. Obviously, now it's just like a bunch of caffeine and yerba mate extract or something.
Oh, but we found new things that work deep in the Amazon rainforest. We found this one root.
The best is when Paul Saladino went to Germany, supposedly found some obscure
I've talked about the book many times.
A secret library, and he translated it into English, and there was this one little paragraph about liver, weed, testicle nonsense, and he made it, and it works. Like, dude, are you like serious?
The German book is the greatest.
Watch this and take this seriously.
Because
what is the weirdest supplement What is the weirdest supplement you guys have ever heard of? I'll tell you mine. I've got people with like lists that are like 30 pages long. The worst one, or most bizarre, there's a bunch, but one of them was horse hoof shavings. One of my patients was taking horse hoof shavings. Like literally when they cut off part of the horse's hooves, they put that in a plastic capsule and they eat it. Like they've been walking in manure. You don't understand that? But that was one of their supplements. And there's all these weird, bizarre weeds and
my favorite type, I would say, is the people that give themselves a tapeworm and it comes in like supplement form, where like so you don't lose weight. Like the tapeworm just eats the food because you're like, look, I can eat as much as I want and I don't gain weight. And you're like, yeah, boy, you also have a tapeworm inside your body.
Heaven forbid you take some Ozempic. Jeez, you'd rather take a life-threatening worm instead of
you're just being a naysayer, Dr. Aloe. That you just don't want people to be able to eat as much as they want and lose weight.
I'm just a pill pusher. I'm a pill pusher.
You don't want these tapeworm supplements.
I just don't want people to get healthy, right? Because that's the other thing. I don't want people to get healthy because that would be less money in my pocket. Of course, that's the reason. Literally,
meanwhile, I'm going to sell these tapeworms and make a fortune. A cured
patient is business lost, or whatever they say. Right, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Keep you around so I can keep making money off your freaking $2. Like, what on earth are people saying?
So good. Love it.
No, these people are nuts. But I don't know how to combat this other than just keep making good content that's reasonable.
Yep. And that's what we're trying to do right here is basically just give out as much decent information as possible. If people wanted more decent information, where could they find you, Dr. Aloe, for more stuff?
Just search Dr. Aloe anywhere.
I feel pretty good about that one. Go ahead.
Just search Dr. Aloe anywhere. DRALO.
ALO.
DRALO. Dr. Aloe, like the lotion, but no E at the end.
Like the lotion. You look up Dr. Aloe like the lotion. No,
I literally tell patients that.
That's your stripper name.
Because I say to patients, I'm like, yeah. They're like, what's your name again? I'm like, Dr. Aloe. They're like, Dr. Hallow? I'm like, no. I'm like, no, like the lotion, but there's no E on the end. They're like, oh, Dr. Aloe. And then they like get it. It clicks.
Oh,
like aloe vera, but no E at the end. They're like, oh, okay.
Okay. So if people want pill pushers, go check out Dr. Aloe.
If you want somebody that knows absolutely nothing and is a conspiracy theorist, is trying to kill you to make more money off of you, please subscribe.
Oh goodness!
That's what I'm called every day. I'm just trying to kill people so I can make more money.
And for people who want to see these cholesterol have sex, what's your OnlyFans?
Oh gosh.
I don't know that I've explored that option, but since I'm not going to sell supplements ever.
It's that sexesterol.
Testosterolemia. There is such a thing.
Oh, goodness.
The lipoprotein molecules are having sex with one another for sure.
So good.
No, this has been a fun episode. I've been on a lot of podcasts, probably the funnest one so far.
It's just fucking have fun.
A lot of them are way more serious. I mean,
no, serious is boring. I listened to your one on The Proof with Simon Hill. That was good. Yeah,
he's a good dude. I like Simon. He's like, I found you on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of found you on TikTok too. He's like, what is a cardiologist doing on TikTok? It's like, you know what? I really have no idea. Somebody told me to get on TikTok. And
losing my mind, losing my sanity is the answer you should have given him.
No. I'm trying to kill people to make more money off of it. That's literally what I'm doing.
With my evil statins.
Right. No, because if I keep you sick, then I make more money.
Oh, that's another good one. Yeah, it's like Big Pharma keeps you sick to make money off you.
I'm a spokesperson for Big Pharma, where clearly you could go online and look that up. It's literally like go to openpayments.cms.gov, type my name in. You'll find I've made all of $2 from Big Pharma.
Well, that's just because you don't have a promo code for your statins yet.
Or I'm not selling
sell your red yeast rice, man. People always ask about that. I see people ask about that all the time. Just sell it to them. Make some money.
Just make my own and make it.
Listen, all I'm saying is you sell the red yeast rice, wherever the fuck it is, and then you say, look, I'm trying to do something that's natural as well. See? And then people will also like you more and you'll make more money. That's all I'm saying.
You'll get he sold out. He's a supplement salesman now. I told you he was just trying to grow his following so he can sell supplements. You're going to get those. Then you're going to get the other haters that are like, you're just a sellout.
Yeah, you pretty much, people just hate you. Like whatever you do on social media, it doesn't matter what side you're on. I mean, Paul Salatinos and all of them, they get plenty of hate, deservedly so. Another
example of this, which is even more bizarre. Lane Norton was he wrote a foreword for my book, by the way.
Oh, that's good.
He was on a podcast explaining how to lose weight. Literally some super benign thing. His nails were painted because his daughter likes to paint his nails for him before his competitions. Literally no one asked about weight loss. No one in the comments said anything about the actual science and data and studies. They were obsessed with why he painted his nails.
Yeah, I know.
Are you people like idiots? Like, why is this even a concern of yours? I can dress and do my hair and my beard and my eyeballs and eyelashes and whatever, however I want. It's none of your business. If you have something to say about my comments or studies or data, feel free.
No, I mean,
we can talk all day.
I mean, even like, I do a video about like, your Bobbies of the world or whatever. Like, I'm like, the stuff they're saying is just nonsense. But half the comments are just like, yeah, and he's a gay boy. And I'm like, that's not really where I was going with this. I don't care. Even if he was gay, which I don't think he is, I don't care. Why are we obsessed with this other shit? Oh, his genes are stupid. Okay. Like, I don't.
Yeah. And then, or somebody would be like, so for example, I even get offended on behalf of Ken Berry. Believe it or not, they're like, well, look at him, he's obese, and they'll find some obscure picture somewhere and post a picture of him being obese. Like, okay, that has nothing to do with what I just said or what he just said. They're
he's also telling people
he's not metabolically healthy. Why don't you tell him you don't look healthy either? I'm like, people, what are you even arguing here, and why? Like, how does this help anyone?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just
so you're arguing that you don't look pretty.
Apparently I don't.
It's all about looks.
They don't like my hair sticking up. Yeah. Like, why do you care? I can do my hair however I want. I can dress however I want. I can not dress however I want. Like, what is the problem here?
But I mean, that's why I wear the soul patch. It's rage bait. People get mad, and that's more comments.
The what patch?
The soul patch is just rage bait for people to get mad and comment, which all helps the algorithm. Thank you very much.
I may have to start finding something like that. Well, I currently already do. They think my eyebrows are fake. They're like, what's with the eyebrows, dude? I'm like, what? I didn't know I had weird eyebrows. Like, now I have now I'm insecure. Like, do I have funny looking eyebrows or something? Like, what? How is this even an issue? Like, I've had multiple people say it. Now I'm like, okay, did I get fake eyebrows and paste them on or something? Like, what are they seeing that I'm not? It's weird.
I don't know.
But it's fun. I mean, I don't know. It's just strange.
Oh, right.
Hey, wasn't that a great time listening to the podcast? You were I'm assuming you were just listening to In Moderation. So if you go ahead and hit the 5-star button, is that a thing? The like button?
That's a thing.
Yep. The like button on YouTube. Stars. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button. Not the dislike button. That's a bad button. The bad like button. Bad button. Hit all the other buttons. The share. You can go check out
all those things.
Subscribe. Go check out our Patreon. Yeah. We do have a Patreon. It's free to join if you want, or you could give us some money. That'd be really cool. Like $1 or $2. It doesn't matter. Whatever you have. That's
where you'll find all the news for this.
We're super appreciative. You can find all sorts of other stuff there. We do giveaways. I think sometimes. Sometimes. All that good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, peace.